My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 32, I never expected a phone call about a trust fund worth $8.5 million to turn my world upside down. I was rushing to share the incredible news with my husband Marcus when a devastating car accident left me fighting for my life. When I finally regained consciousness after 5 days, Marcus was nowhere to be found. His excuse? He was too busy building his future to waste time on a liability. But when he showed up weeks later with his new girlfriend to torment me, neither of us expected her reaction when she saw my face. If you're reading this story, please hit like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're following from. This is the story of how betrayal led me to discover a family secret that changed everything I thought I knew about my life. The unexpected inheritance. My relationship with my great-aunt Eleanor had always been distant but meaningful. She was my grandmother's younger sister, a woman who had built a fortune in the tech industry during the early days of Silicon Valley. While my family struggled financially throughout my childhood in Portland, Oregon, Aunt Eleanor lived in a mansion in Marin County, California, surrounded by wealth I could barely comprehend. Eleanor was known for her sharp mind and sharper tongue. She had never married, dedicating her life entirely to her software development company that she sold to Microsoft in the early 2000s for an astronomical sum. Family gatherings were rare, but when they occurred, Eleanor would single me out, asking probing questions about my goals and ambitions that made other relatives uncomfortable. "You have fire in your eyes, Sarah," she told me during my college graduation party. "Don't let anyone extinguish that flame." I thought it was just the wine talking, but her words stayed with me through the years. After graduation, I moved to Seattle and took a job as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized consulting firm. Eleanor and I began exchanging emails regularly. Her messages were filled with business insights, life advice, and occasionally subtle criticism of my choices, particularly regarding Marcus. Marcus Chen and I had met at a coffee shop near Pike Place Market 3 years earlier. He was working as a freelance graphic designer, charming and ambitious, with dreams of starting his own advertising agency. His confidence was infectious, and his passion for creative work reminded me of Eleanor's entrepreneurial spirit, though I never mentioned that comparison to him. We married after a year of dating in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside Seattle. Marcus insisted on an expensive wedding that stretched our finances thin, but he promised it was an investment in our future. "Appearances matter in business," he explained when I questioned the cost. "We need to look successful to become successful." The first 2 years of marriage were filled with promise. Marcus worked long hours building his client base while I climbed the corporate ladder at my firm. We lived modestly in a one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, saving every penny for Marcus's dream agency. Or at least I thought we were saving. Recently, I had begun noticing discrepancies. Marcus claimed to be networking at expensive restaurants, but I never met any of these supposed business contacts. He purchased high-end equipment for his home office, but seemed to have fewer clients than ever. When I questioned him about our dwindling savings account, he would deflect, saying he was on the verge of landing a major contract that would change everything. Eleanor's health had been declining for the past year. When she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, I started visiting her monthly, making the drive down to California whenever possible. During our last conversation, she was heavily medicated but lucid enough to hold my hand and whisper, "You're the only one who understood what I was trying to build, Sarah. Promise me you'll use whatever I leave you to create something meaningful." I promised, though I assumed she meant perhaps her book collection or some family jewelry. Eleanor passed away peacefully 3 weeks later, and I mourned her more deeply than I expected. She had been a mentor figure I didn't realize I needed. The life-changing phone call. The call came from Robert Steinberg, Eleanor's estate attorney, on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly marketing reports at my desk. "Miss Mitchell, this is Robert Steinberg from Steinberg & Associates. I'm handling your great-aunt Eleanor's estate. Would you be available to come to my office this afternoon? There are some matters we need to discuss regarding her will." I assumed it was routine paperwork, perhaps signing documents to transfer some small bequest. I took the afternoon off and drove to the law firm's downtown Seattle office, a gleaming tower that spoke of serious money. Robert was a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and a kind but serious demeanor. After offering condolences, he got straight to business. "Eleanor revised her will significantly in the months before her death," he explained, sliding a thick document across his mahogany desk. "She's left you her entire estate, valued at approximately $8.5 million, including her property in Marin County, her investment portfolio, and various other assets." The words didn't process immediately. I stared at the numbers on the page, certain there had been some mistake. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" $8.5 million, Miss Mitchell. Your great-aunt was very specific about her wishes. She felt you were the only family member who shared her vision for entrepreneurship and social responsibility. Attached to the will was a handwritten letter from Eleanor. My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever adventure awaits next. You've always reminded me of myself at your age, intelligent, driven, but sometimes too trusting of the wrong people. This money is not just wealth, it's freedom. Freedom to pursue your own dreams, to help others, and to never compromise your values for anyone. I've watched you sacrifice your ambitions to support someone else's vision. Now you have the power to support your own. Use it wisely, and remember that true success isn't measured in dollars, but in the positive impact you make on the world. With love and hope for your future, Aunt Eleanor. I sat in that office for nearly an hour, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. $8.5 million. It was enough money to change everything. Pay off our debts, buy a house, travel the world, start my own business. Marcus could finally launch his agency without financial stress, and I could pursue the non-profit work I had always dreamed about. The paperwork would take several days to process, but Robert assured me the inheritance was ironclad. Eleanor had been very thorough in her planning. Driving home, I could barely contain my excitement. I called Marcus to tell him I was coming home early with incredible news, but he sounded distracted and slightly annoyed. I'm in the middle of a crucial project, Sarah. Some huge potential client is interested in my portfolio. Can this wait until dinner? This is important, Marcus. Life-changing important. Fine, but make it quick. I have a conference call in an hour. His dismissive tone dampened my enthusiasm slightly, but I reminded myself that once he heard the news, everything would change. We could finally stop worrying about money and focus on building the life we had always talked about. The accident. The rain had started during my drive home from the attorney's office, creating a fine mist that made the Seattle streets slick and treacherous. I was so focused on planning how to share the news with Marcus that I didn't notice the pickup truck running the red light until it was too late. The impact came from my passenger side as I proceeded through the intersection near our apartment. The sound of crushing metal and shattering glass seemed to last forever, though it probably occurred in seconds. My small Honda Civic was no match for the full-size pickup truck whose driver, I later learned, had been texting while driving. I remember the sensation of spinning, of weightlessness, of my carefully organized life literally turning upside down. Then darkness. When consciousness finally returned, I was surrounded by the sterile white walls and antiseptic smell of a hospital room. Every part of my body ached, and breathing sent sharp pains through my chest. My right leg was suspended in some kind of traction device, and my left arm was in a cast. "Welcome back," a gentle voice said. I turned my head slowly to see a nurse with kind eyes and graying hair checking my IV. Her name tag read, Linda Rodriguez, RN. What happened? My voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "You were in a serious car accident 5 days ago," Linda explained, adjusting my blankets. "You've been unconscious since they brought you in. You have a concussion, 3 broken ribs, a compound fracture in your right leg, and various other injuries. But you're going to be okay." 5 days. I had been unconscious for 5 days. "My husband... Does Marcus know I'm here?" Linda's expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. "We called the emergency contact number in your phone multiple times. We left detailed messages, but..." She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. "But what? He hasn't come to visit yet. I'm sure he'll be here soon, though." The words hit me like a physical blow. 5 days, and Marcus hadn't even visited? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was in shock. Maybe he was handling insurance issues. Maybe he was so worried he couldn't bear to see me injured. "Can I have my phone?" I asked. Linda hesitated. "The police have it as evidence, but we can get you a hospital phone to make calls." Over the next several hours, I tried calling Marcus repeatedly. Sometimes it went straight to voicemail. Sometimes it rang endlessly without answer. The few times he did pick up, the conversations were brief and strange. "Marcus, I've been in the hospital for 5 days. Where are you?" "I know about the accident, Sarah. I'm dealing with a lot right now. This client situation is really intense." "Client situation? I'm in the hospital." "Look, I'll try to get by when things calm down here. I'm in the middle of something really big." The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone in disbelief. Dr. Amanda Foster, the attending physician, was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who had apparently been advocating for me since my arrival. "Your injuries were severe," she explained during her rounds. "The truck driver who hit you was killed on impact. You're incredibly fortunate to be alive. The recovery will be long, at least 6 weeks in the hospital, followed by months of physical therapy." "When can I have visitors? I mean, regular visitors?" Dr. Foster consulted her chart. "You can have visitors anytime. Has your family not been coming?" I couldn't bring myself to explain that my only immediate family, my husband, seemed to have disappeared. Instead, I asked about the inheritance paperwork I had left in my car. "Your personal effects were recovered," Linda said later. "The briefcase was damaged, but everything inside was intact. We have it in the hospital safe." At least that was one relief. Whatever was happening with Marcus, the inheritance was secure. The cruel phone call. By day 7, my confusion had turned to anger and then to deep hurt. I had received flowers from colleagues, visits from friends, and calls from distant relatives who had heard about the accident, but nothing from the person who mattered most. When Marcus finally answered his phone on day 8, I was prepared for a difficult conversation. "Marcus, I need you to explain what's going on. I've been hospitalized for over a week and you haven't even visited once." There was a long pause before he responded, and when he did, his voice had a coldness I had never heard before. "Look, Sarah, I'm going to be straight with you. I don't have time or money to waste on someone who's become a liability. Some of us are focused on building successful futures." "Liability? I'm your wife!" "You're a drain on resources I can't afford to lose right now. This business opportunity could change everything for me, and I can't let your situation derail that." The casual cruelty of his words left me speechless. This wasn't the man I had married, the man I had supported and believed in for 3 years. "Business opportunity? What are you talking about?" "Something you wouldn't understand. I'm moving forward with my life, Sarah. I suggest you figure out how to do the same." The phone clicked off, leaving me in stunned silence. Linda, who had been checking on me throughout this conversation, gently took the phone from my shaking hands. "Honey, I don't know what's going on in your marriage, but that man doesn't deserve your tears." She was right, but that didn't stop me from crying for the next several hours, uncovering the truth. My friend Jessica Martinez was the first person to visit who shed light on what Marcus had been doing during my hospitalization. Jessica and I had worked together for 2 years before she moved to a different company, and she had always been suspicious of Marcus's business claims. "Sarah, I hate to tell you this while you're recovering, but I think you need to know what I've seen," she said, settling into the uncomfortable visitor's chair. "Tell me." "Marcus has been posting all over social media about his fresh start and new opportunities. He's been seen around town with a woman named Amanda Walsh. They've been to several high-end restaurants and art gallery openings together." Jessica showed me screenshots from Instagram and Facebook. There was Marcus, looking more polished and expensive than I had ever seen him, with his arm around a striking redhead in designer clothes. The captions talked about embracing change and seizing opportunities. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "Based on the posts, at least 3 weeks before your accident. Sarah, I think he's been planning to leave you for a while." The timeline made sickening sense. Marcus's distance, his secretive phone calls, his sudden interest in expensive clothes and restaurants. He had been preparing for a different life while I was supporting his supposed business development. "There's more," Jessica said hesitantly. "I did some digging because something felt off about this Amanda woman. She works at Prestige Financial Consulting, a firm that specializes in wealth management for high net worth individuals. The implications hit me immediately. Somehow, Marcus had learned about Eleanor's inheritance and was positioning himself to take advantage of it, possibly with professional help. "Jessica, I need you to help me with something. In my briefcase in the hospital safe, there are legal documents about an inheritance. I think Marcus knows about it, and I think that's why he's acting this way." Over the next few days, Jessica helped me piece together the timeline. Eleanor's will had been filed in California probate court, which meant the information was technically public record. Marcus could have been monitoring obituaries and legal filings, or Amanda could have been helping him track wealthy families in the region. The more I learned, the more manipulated I felt. Had Marcus married me knowing Eleanor might leave me money? Had our entire relationship been a long-term financial strategy? The confrontation. 2 weeks after my accident, Marcus finally came to the hospital. But he didn't come alone, and he didn't come to reconcile. I was doing physical therapy exercises in my bed when Linda knocked on my doorframe. "Sarah, you have visitors. Your husband is here with a woman named Amanda Walsh. Do you want to see them?" My heart raced. This was it. The confrontation I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. "Yes, send them in." Marcus entered first, and I was struck by how different he looked. Gone were the casual clothes and slightly unkempt appearance of a struggling freelancer. He wore an expensive-looking suit, had gotten a professional haircut, and carried himself with a confidence that seemed almost foreign. Behind him walked a woman who could have stepped out of a magazine. Amanda Walsh was tall, elegant, with perfectly styled red hair and clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary. But what struck me most was her expression. Not the smugness or cruelty I expected, but genuine nervousness. "Hello, Sarah," Marcus said, his tone clinical and detached. "You're looking better." "Better than what? Better than dead?" He ignored the barb. "We need to discuss some practical matters. Your accident has created some complications." "Complications?" Amanda stepped forward, and I noticed she was carrying a manila folder. "Sarah, I'm Amanda Walsh. I'm a financial consultant, and I've been helping Marcus understand his options regarding your situation." "My situation?" Marcus sat down uninvited in the visitor's chair, while Amanda remained standing near the foot of my bed. "Sarah, let's be realistic. Your injuries are severe, your recovery will be expensive and time-consuming, and frankly, this accident has derailed some important plans. I stared at him in disbelief. What plans? Business plans that require significant capital investment, plans that your medical expenses and inability to work are going to make impossible. Amanda opened her folder and pulled out several documents. Marcus has explained that you recently came into some money through an inheritance. Given your current incapacity, it would be prudent to establish financial power of attorney so he can manage these assets while you recover. The audacity was breathtaking. They had come to my hospital bed to try to steal my inheritance while I was injured and vulnerable. Get out, I said quietly. Sarah, be reasonable, Marcus continued. You're not thinking clearly because of the medications and trauma. I'm trying to protect our financial future. Our future? You told me I was a liability you couldn't afford. I was frustrated and said things I didn't mean. But this inheritance changes everything. We can work through our problems if we're smart about managing this opportunity. Amanda moved closer to the bed, her professional mask slipping slightly. Sarah, I understand this is difficult, but sometimes major life events require difficult decisions. Marcus has told me about your relationship challenges, and frankly, your medical situation makes you unsuitable for managing significant assets right now. Something about her phrasing, her whole demeanor, felt wrong. I studied her face more carefully, noting features that seemed oddly familiar. How exactly did you and Marcus meet? I asked. They exchanged a quick glance before Amanda answered. Through professional networks. I specialize in helping entrepreneurs navigate sudden wealth. And when exactly did you start? Helping him. Another glance between them. Marcus stood up abruptly. These details aren't important, Sarah. What matters is making smart decisions about the inheritance. Smart decisions like giving you power of attorney while I'm incapacitated. Like making sure the money is properly managed and invested rather than wasted on medical bills and recovery costs that might not even be successful. The cruelty of his statement, suggesting my recovery might not be successful and therefore wasn't worth the investment, revealed the depth of his callousness. I said, get out. Both of you. Marcus's facade finally cracked. Fine. But don't come crying to me when you realize you've made a huge mistake. Some of us are capable of thinking strategically about the future. As he turned to leave, Amanda hesitated, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. There was something in her eyes. Recognition? Confusion? Fear? Marcus, maybe we should, she started to say. Come on, Amanda. We have better things to do than waste time on someone who can't see reason. But Amanda wasn't moving. She was staring at me intently, her face growing pale. Amanda? Marcus called from the doorway, impatience clear in his voice. She took a step closer to my bed, her professional composure completely gone now. Her hand was shaking as she reached into her purse. Oh my God, she whispered, pulling out a small photograph. You're my mother. The shocking revelation. The room went completely silent. Marcus spun around from the doorway, confusion replacing his impatience. What are you talking about? He demanded. Amanda's hands were trembling as she held out the photograph for me to see. It was an old Polaroid of a teenage girl holding a newborn baby. The girl's face was partially obscured by the hospital lighting, but there was no mistaking the distinctive features, my eyes, my nose, my chin. I've been looking for you my entire life, Amanda said, her voice breaking. I was adopted as an infant, and this was the only photo I had of my birth mother. My world tilted sideways. Memories I had buried for years came flooding back, being 17, pregnant, and terrified. The boyfriend who abandoned me when I told him, the parents who sent me away to have the baby in secret, the brief moment I held my daughter before signing the adoption papers, knowing I would never see her again. Amanda, I whispered, the name feeling strange and familiar at once. I named you Amanda. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, clearly trying to process what was happening. This is impossible. This has to be some kind of mistake. But Amanda was pulling more documents from her purse. Adoption papers, medical records, letters from the adoption agency. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, she read from one document. Born in Portland, Oregon. Age at time of birth, 17. The details matched perfectly. This beautiful, sophisticated woman was the baby I had given up 15 years ago, the daughter I had thought about every day since. How did you find me? I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. Amanda looked uncomfortable, glancing at Marcus, who still stood in the doorway like a statue. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago. When I learned about your great-aunt's death and the inheritance, I thought maybe you would be more receptive to contact if you were financially secure. And you just happened to meet Marcus? I pressed, though the truth was becoming clear. I approached him. I knew he was your husband, and I thought he might help facilitate a reunion. Marcus finally found his voice. You told me you were a financial consultant who specialized in inheritance cases. I am a financial consultant, Amanda said defensively. But I also wanted to meet my birth mother. When I learned about the inheritance, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Amanda had approached Marcus to get closer to me, but Marcus had seen an opportunity of his own. He had seduced my daughter as part of his plan to access my inheritance. "How long have you two been together?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Amanda flushed red. "We're not together. I mean, we've spent time together while planning this, but it's not romantic." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Planning what? You led me to believe you were helping me secure my wife's inheritance for business purposes. I was trying to find a way to approach my birth mother by manipulating her husband." I watched this confrontation with a mixture of horror and fascination. Both of them had been using the other for their own purposes, creating a web of deception that had exploded in the worst possible way. "So let me understand this," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Amanda, you hired a private investigator to find me, learned about the inheritance, and approached my husband, hoping he would help you make contact." Amanda nodded miserably. "And Marcus, you met this beautiful woman who claimed to be a financial consultant, started a relationship with her, and saw an opportunity to convince me to give you power of attorney over my inheritance." Marcus said nothing, but his expression confirmed my suspicions. What neither of you realized is that you were both trying to manipulate the same situation for different reasons. Amanda burst into tears. "I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted to meet you. When Marcus started talking about business opportunities and managing your money, I thought maybe I could help make sure you were protected." "Protected from what?" "From him," she said, pointing at Marcus. "The more time I spent with him, the more I realized he didn't actually care about you. He only cared about the money." Marcus stepped back into the room, his face flushed with anger. "You manipulative little—" "Enough!" I shouted, surprising all of us with my volume. "Both of you, sit down. We're going to have a conversation like adults." The truth comes out. What followed was one of the most surreal conversations of my life. Sitting in my hospital bed, injured and vulnerable, I found myself mediating between my estranged husband and the daughter I had given up for adoption 15 years ago. Amanda told her story first. She had been raised by loving adoptive parents in Vancouver, Washington, just across the river from Portland. They had always been open about her adoption and supportive of her desire to find her birth parents when she came of age. "I started searching when I turned 18, she explained, "but the adoption was closed and there wasn't much information to go on. The private investigator I hired finally tracked you down through medical records and cross-referenced them with recent legal filings." "How did you learn about Eleanor's death?" "Obituaries mentioned surviving relatives, including you. When the estate records became public, I realized this might be my only chance to approach you when you weren't struggling financially." The irony was bitter. Amanda had wanted to protect me from being seen as a gold digger, while not realizing she was delivering me directly into the hands of one. Marcus's motivations were more straightforward and infinitely more selfish. He confirmed what I had suspected. Our marriage had been strategic from the beginning. "I knew about Eleanor," he admitted. "I researched your family before we started dating. Old money, tech fortune, no children of her own. It seemed likely she would leave everything to a relative." "So you married me for my inheritance?" "I married you because you were stable, employed, and had wealthy relatives. The inheritance was always a possibility, not a guarantee." The casual way he discussed using me as a financial investment was almost more hurtful than his infidelity. I had loved him genuinely while he had seen me as a business opportunity. Amanda had been sitting quietly during this exchange, but now she spoke up. "Sarah, I need you to know that I never intended for any of this to happen. When I approached Marcus, I told him I was interested in meeting you and wondered if he could help. He's the one who suggested we should get to know each other first." "And how exactly did you get to know each other?" I asked. Both of them looked uncomfortable. Marcus answered first. "We had dinner a few times to discuss how to approach you about the adoption situation." "Dinner dates while your wife was visiting her dying aunt?" "They weren't dates," Amanda insisted. "At least I didn't think they were. Marcus said you two were having problems and that you might be more receptive to contact from me if you were going through other life changes." Marcus's manipulation had been even more extensive than I realized. He had convinced Amanda that our marriage was already failing, while convincing me that his distance was due to business stress. "When did you realize he was using you?" I asked Amanda. "When he started talking about power of attorney and asset management," she said. "I'm actually a financial consultant, so I know those documents don't have anything to do with facilitating contact between adoptees and birth parents. That's when I started to understand his real motivation." "But you still came here with him today." Amanda looked ashamed. "I was trying to figure out how to warn you without revealing my own deception. I thought if I came with him, I could somehow protect you from signing anything harmful." Marcus snorted derisively. "How noble of you, considering you've been lying about who you are for months." "I was trying to find my birth mother," Amanda shot back. "You were trying to steal from your wife. I held up my hand to stop their argument. Both of you made serious mistakes. The question now is what we do about it. Over the next hour, we established some basic facts. Marcus had been planning to leave me regardless of the inheritance, but the money had accelerated his timeline. Amanda genuinely wanted a relationship with me, but had gone about it in the worst possible way, and I was now faced with rebuilding my life while navigating this bizarre family reunion. I want both of you to leave, I finally said. Marcus, you and I are done. I'll be filing for divorce as soon as I'm released from the hospital. Marcus stood up, his mask of civility finally completely gone. Fine, but don't expect me to make this easy. I know about the inheritance and I have a lawyer too. Good luck with that, I replied calmly. Eleanor was very specific in her will about protecting the inheritance from exactly this kind of situation. Marcus stormed out, but Amanda remained in her chair, tears streaming down her face. Sarah, I know I have no right to ask this, but please don't shut me out completely. I've wanted to know you my entire life. I studied her face, seeing my own features reflected in hers. Despite everything that had happened, despite the manipulation and deception, she was still my daughter. I need time to process all of this, I said. But Amanda, if you want a relationship with me, it has to be built on honesty from now on. She nodded eagerly. Anything, I'll do whatever it takes. Start by telling me about your real life, your adoptive parents, your career, your dreams. No more lies or hidden agendas. Building something real. Amanda's real story was both simpler and more complex than the web of deception that had brought us together. She had been raised by David and Karen Walsh, a middle-class couple who ran a small accounting firm in Vancouver. They had struggled with infertility for years before adopting Amanda, and they had never hidden the fact that she was adopted. They were amazing parents, she told me during her next visit. They always said I was their chosen daughter, that they had picked me specifically because they knew I was meant to be part of their family. Do they know you found me? They've known I was searching and they've been supportive. They want to meet you, actually, if you're ever ready for that. The idea of meeting the people who had raised my daughter was both terrifying and wonderful. They had given her the stable, loving home I couldn't provide at 17. Amanda had studied finance in college and worked her way up at Prestige Financial Consulting, specializing in estate planning and wealth management. Her professional credentials were real, which made her involvement in Marcus's scheme even more puzzling. Why risk your career for this? I asked. Because finding you was more important than any job, she said simply. I've been successful financially, but there was always this missing piece of my identity. When I learned about the inheritance, I thought it might be my only chance to approach you from a position of strength rather than need. Her logic was flawed but understandable. At 17, I had given her up because I couldn't provide for her. At 32, with a substantial inheritance, I was in a very different position. Recovery from my injuries was slow and painful, but having Amanda visit regularly gave me motivation to push through the difficult days. We established visiting schedules that allowed us to get to know each other gradually without overwhelming either of us. Dr. Foster was cautiously optimistic about my prognosis. You'll regain full mobility, she assured me, but it's going to take months of physical therapy and dedication. I have good motivation, I said, glancing at Amanda, who had taken to reading to me during my afternoon therapy sessions. The divorce proceedings with Marcus were contentious but brief. Eleanor's attorney, Robert Steinberg, had flown to Seattle to ensure the inheritance was protected during the process. He brought with him additional documents that Eleanor had prepared specifically for this type of situation. Your great-aunt was very thorough, Robert explained. She included provisions that protect the inheritance from being claimed by spouses in the event of divorce, particularly if the marriage occurred within 5 years of her death. Eleanor had been more perceptive than I realized. She had seen through Marcus before I did. Marcus tried to claim half of the inheritance as community property, but the legal protections Eleanor had put in place made his case hopeless. He eventually settled for a small amount of cash in exchange for a quick, clean divorce. Good riddance, Amanda said when I told her about the final settlement. You deserve so much better than him. The strangest part of our situation was how quickly we fell into a natural rhythm as mother and daughter. Amanda had inherited my stubborn streak and my tendency to overthink problems, but she had also developed a warmth and empathy that I envied. Your parents did an amazing job raising you, I told her one afternoon as we walked slowly around the hospital corridors during my physical therapy. I'd like you to meet them, she said. If you're ready, they're driving down this weekend. Meeting David and Karen Walsh was one of the most emotional experiences of my life. They were exactly the kind of people I had hoped would adopt my baby, kind, stable, and utterly devoted to their daughter. We can never thank you enough, Karen said, hugging me carefully to avoid aggravating my injuries. Amanda's brought us so much joy. Thank you for giving her the life I couldn't, I replied, meaning every word. David, a quiet man with gentle eyes, pulled me aside later in the visit. "She's been searching for you with such determination," he said. "Not because she wasn't happy with us, but because she needed to understand where she came from. I hope you can give her that." Over dinner in my hospital room, the four of us shared stories and gradually built the foundation for an extended family relationship. Amanda's parents were as excited about having me in their lives as she was. "We always wondered about Amanda's birth parents," Karen admitted. "We hoped you were happy and successful somewhere." "I thought about her every day," I said, looking at Amanda, "especially on her birthday. I would wonder if she was healthy, if she was happy, if she ever thought about me." "Every birthday," Amanda confirmed. "Mom and Dad would tell me it was okay to wonder about you, that it didn't mean I loved them any less." 6 weeks after the accident, I was finally discharged from the hospital. The apartment I had shared with Marcus held too many painful memories, and Amanda suggested I stay with her while I finished recovering. "I have a 2-bedroom condo in Bellevue," she offered. "It's got an elevator and no stairs. Plus I work from home most days, so I could help if you need anything." Moving in with the daughter I had given up 15 years earlier felt surreal, but it also felt right. We were both adults now, both independent, choosing to build a relationship based on mutual affection rather than obligation. Amanda's condo was beautiful, decorated with a sophisticated taste that reminded me of Eleanor. She had created a warm, comfortable home that reflected both her professional success and her personal style. "Did you always want to work in finance?" I asked as she showed me around. "Actually, I wanted to be a teacher when I was little," she said, with a smile. "But I was always good with numbers, and Dad encouraged me to consider business. I fell in love with helping people manage their wealth responsibly." That sounds like something Eleanor would have appreciated. "Tell me more about her. I wish I could have met my great-great-aunt." Living with Amanda was easier than either of us had expected. We discovered we shared similar routines, early risers who preferred quiet mornings with coffee and news. We both loved cooking, though Amanda was far more skilled than I was. Most surprisingly, we had similar senses of humor, finding ourselves laughing at the same movies and books. "Genetics are weird," Amanda observed one evening as we both reached for the remote at exactly the same moment during a commercial break. "Or maybe we're just both control freaks," I suggested. "Definitely that too." Physical therapy was grueling, but having Amanda's support made the difference between progress and giving up. She drove me to appointments, cheered me through difficult sessions, and celebrated small victories like walking to the mailbox without assistance. "You're the strongest person I know," she told me after a particularly challenging therapy session. I had good motivation, I replied. I wanted to be the mother you deserved, even if it's 15 years late. 3 months after the accident, I was walking without assistance and ready to make some major life decisions. The inheritance from Eleanor was substantial enough that I never had to work again if I chose not to, but sitting idle wasn't appealing. "What do you want to do with your life now?" Amanda asked one Sunday morning as we shared breakfast on her balcony overlooking Lake Washington. "I've been thinking about that a lot," I said. "Eleanor wanted me to use the money to create something meaningful. I think I want to start a foundation that helps young mothers who are facing the same decision I faced." Amanda's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. You could provide counseling, financial assistance, maybe even transitional housing. Would you be interested in helping me plan it? I mean, professionally? Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership, if you want it." Amanda set down her coffee cup and stared at me. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. You have the financial expertise. I have the funding and personal experience. We could create something that actually makes a difference." She was quiet for a long moment, then broke into a huge smile. "Yes, absolutely yes." Over the following weeks, we began sketching out plans for the Eleanor Walsh Foundation for Young Mothers. The name honored both Eleanor's memory and Amanda's adoptive family, bringing together all the threads of our complicated story. Amanda's professional network proved invaluable as we began developing the foundation's structure. She introduced me to lawyers who specialized in nonprofit law, accountants who understood charitable organizations, and social workers who could help us understand the real needs of our target population. "This is what I was meant to do," Amanda said one evening as we reviewed applications for our initial board of directors. "Building something together? Building something meaningful with my birth mother. 2 years ago, I never could have imagined this." The foundation officially launched 6 months after my accident, with Amanda as executive director and me as founder and chair of the board. Our first initiative was a residential program for pregnant teenagers, providing housing, education support, and counseling, regardless of their decision about the pregnancy. "We're not trying to influence anyone's choice," I explained to a reporter during our launch event. "We're just providing support and resources so young women can make informed decisions without fear or pressure." Amanda handled the media interviews with poise and professionalism, explaining our programs and philosophy with the kind of clarity that came from personal investment in the mission. This foundation exists because my birth mother made a difficult decision when she was 17, she told one interviewer. She gave me life and then made sure I had a good one. Now we want to help other young women navigate similar situations with dignity and support. The response was overwhelming. Within our first year, we had requests for assistance from across the Pacific Northwest and inquiries about replicating our model in other cities. Marcus tried to contact me once during this period, claiming he deserved recognition for facilitating my reunion with Amanda. Amanda was the one who took his call. "Let me be very clear," she told him. "You manipulated both my birth mother and me for financial gain. You contributed nothing positive to our relationship, and if you contact either of us again, I'll file harassment charges." He never called back. 1 year after the accident, Amanda and I decided to visit Eleanor's estate in Marin County, which I had inherited but never seen. The house was magnificent, a sprawling craftsman-style home with panoramic views of San Francisco Bay. She had amazing taste, Amanda said as we toured the rooms filled with beautiful furniture and artwork. "This could be our foundation's headquarters," I suggested. "There's enough space for offices, meeting rooms, even a small residential program. That would be perfect. Eleanor would love knowing her home was being used to help young mothers." We spent 3 days at the estate, planning how to convert it for the foundation's use while preserving Eleanor's personal touches. On our last evening, we sat on the deck watching the sunset over the bay. "Do you ever regret it?" Amanda asked. "Giving me up for adoption?" I had been expecting this question for months, and I had thought carefully about my answer. "I regret that I wasn't in a position to raise you myself," I said. "But I don't regret making sure you had parents who could give you everything you needed. Seeing the woman you've become, knowing how much David and Karen love you, I think we all made the right choice. Even though it meant you spent 15 years wondering about me. Especially because of that. Missing you kept you alive in my heart, and when we found each other again, it meant something deeper because we both chose it as adults." Amanda leaned against my shoulder, something she had started doing naturally in recent months. "I'm glad Marcus was such a terrible person." I laughed. "That's a strange thing to be grateful for. If he hadn't been planning to steal your inheritance, I might never have worked up the courage to approach you. His greed gave me the excuse I needed to find you." So something good came out of his betrayal, after all. The best thing. 2 years after the accident, the foundation had grown beyond our wildest expectations. We had programs in 6 states, had helped over 300 young women, and had partnered with dozens of organizations focused on supporting families in crisis. Amanda had become a nationally recognized expert on supporting pregnant teenagers, speaking at conferences and consulting with other organizations. Her adoptive parents were enormously proud, and they had become integral parts of our extended family. "You know what the best part is?" Amanda said during our second annual board meeting. "What's that?" "We're proving that families can be created in all kinds of ways. Birth, adoption, choice, circumstance. Love is what makes them real." I looked around the room at our board members, social workers, former clients, adoptive parents, birth mothers who had made different choices than I had. Amanda was right. We had created a family of choice, united by our commitment to supporting others. "Eleanor would be proud," I said. "I think she knew this would happen," Amanda replied. "I think she planned it this way." "You think she knew about you?" "I think she knew you had the capacity to turn pain into purpose. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was an opportunity to heal old wounds by helping others." That evening, as we locked up the foundation office, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us here. Marcus's betrayal had been devastating at the time, but it had also created the circumstances that reunited me with my daughter and gave us both a mission worth dedicating our lives to. "Are you happy?" Amanda asked as we walked to our cars. "Happier than I've ever been," I said honestly. "Are you?" I found my birth mother, discovered my life's work, and helped create something meaningful. I couldn't be happier. 3 years later, Amanda married a wonderful man named David, named after her adoptive father, who worked as a pediatric nurse and shared our commitment to helping children and families. I walked her down the aisle with her adoptive parents' blessing and joy. "I always wondered who would give me away at my wedding," she told me during the ceremony planning. "I gave you away once," I said. "This time, I'm giving you to someone who deserves you." The wedding was held at Eleanor's estate, which had become our foundation headquarters. The gardens were in full bloom, and the house was filled with laughter and celebration. Marcus's betrayal felt like a distant memory, a necessary catalyst that had led us to this joy. During her wedding speech, Amanda surprised everyone by announcing the foundation's newest initiative, a scholarship program for children of teenage mothers who wanted to pursue careers in social work or healthcare. This foundation started because my birth mother and I found each other through the worst possible circumstances, she said. But it grew because we realized that the worst circumstances often create the strongest people. We want to support young people who understand struggle and want to help others overcome it. The scholarship program, funded by a major grant from Eleanor's estate, would support 50 students annually. It was our way of ensuring that the next generation would be even better equipped to support families in crisis. 5 years after the accident that changed everything, I received an unexpected call from Marcus. He was in prison, serving time for fraud related to another scheme he had attempted after our divorce. I wanted to apologize, he said during our brief conversation. For what specifically? I asked. For not seeing what I had. For treating you like a business opportunity instead of a person, for being too selfish to appreciate what we could have built together. Thank you for saying that, I said. But you should know I'm grateful for how things turned out. Even though I hurt you, especially because you hurt me, your betrayal led me back to my daughter and to work that actually matters. I would never choose to go through it again, but I wouldn't change the outcome. There was a long pause before he responded. You always were too good for me. I was too good for the person you chose to be. But it's not too late for you to become someone better. After hanging up, I realized I felt no anger toward Marcus anymore, only pity for the opportunities he had wasted and the relationships he had destroyed through his selfishness. Today, 7 years after that devastating phone call in my hospital bed, I can honestly say that Marcus's cruelty was the best thing that ever happened to me. It freed me from a marriage built on deception, reunited me with my daughter, and gave us both the opportunity to create something meaningful from our pain. The foundation now operates in 12 states and has helped over 1,500 young women navigate pregnancy, parenthood, and adoption decisions with dignity and support. Amanda has become a national advocate for adoption reform and family support services. We have monthly family dinners that include Amanda's adoptive parents, her husband, and their 2 children, my grandchildren. Eleanor's estate has become the center of our lives, filled with the laughter and love she never had the chance to experience herself. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Marcus had been a different kind of man, if he had celebrated the inheritance with me, supported me through my recovery, and built a life together based on honesty and mutual respect. But then I remember that such a man would never have manipulated my daughter in the first place, and our reunion might never have happened. Do you ever miss the simple life? Amanda asked me recently, as we reviewed applications for our latest program expansion. You mean the life where I was supporting someone else's dreams while ignoring my own? The life where you weren't responsible for helping hundreds of families every year? I thought about it seriously. There had been a certain ease to my old life. Going to work, coming home, watching television with Marcus, worrying only about our small problems and ordinary dreams. No, I said finally. This is who I was meant to be. Eleanor saw it even when I didn't. And I was meant to find you? You were meant to find me, and I was meant to find a way to turn my biggest mistake into my greatest achievement. Amanda smiled. Giving me up wasn't a mistake, Mom. It was the first of many good decisions you made for me. The word Mom still gives me a thrill every time she says it. We agreed early in our relationship that she would always have 2 mothers, Karen, who raised her, and me, who gave her life and then found her again. There's no competition, no jealousy, just gratitude for the different roles we each played in creating the remarkable woman she became. As I finish writing this story, I'm sitting in Eleanor's former study, now my office at the foundation. On the wall hangs a photo from Amanda's wedding, all of us together, laughing in the sunshine. Next to it is a framed copy of Eleanor's letter about using wealth to create meaning. If someone had told me 7 years ago that my husband's betrayal would lead to the best period of my life, I would never have believed them. But sometimes the worst things that happen to us create space for the best things to enter. Marcus thought he was stealing my future when he tried to take my inheritance. Instead, he was freeing me to claim a future I never could have imagined. One where my greatest pain became my greatest purpose, where the daughter I thought I had lost forever became my closest partner, and where an elderly aunt's wisdom guided us toward work that actually matters. The accident that nearly killed me became the moment my real life began. The betrayal that broke my heart opened it wide enough to hold a family I never knew I could have. And the inheritance that made me a target ultimately gave me the power to help others navigate their own impossible choices with grace and support. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're truly capable of gaining. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? I'd love to hear your stories of how the worst moments became catalysts for the best ones. Please share in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding hope in unexpected places. Remember, sometimes the people who hurt us the most are actually clearing the path to the life we were always meant to live. Trust the journey, even when you can't see where it's leading.